A 16-year-old boy was murdered by his friends 9 years ago. To this day, I still cry over it, even when everyone else has forgotten about him. I don't know why, but this death always makes me feel immensely sad whenever I think about it. It was in winter. The 16-year-old boy was having some kind of night out with his friends. I'm not sure how long he'd known these friends, but he was seen at a McDonald's with these friends and wasn't seen alive again. The boy was reported as missing, and a search was underway. Early the next morning, he was found in his car in the middle of nowhere, dead and half frozen. He'd been choked to death, and from what I recall it was quite violent as bruises were repeatedly mentioned. The suspects were never charged due to insufficient evidence. None of the boy's belongings were taken, and no motive was revealed. The case remains officially unsolved to this day, and from what I recall only 1 or 2 YouTube narrators ever mentioned the case with updates. It's like everyone just forgot about him. His death didn't even get into the national news, and it was only mentioned in a few papers. I just think it must have been so scary to be alone at night in the middle of nowhere with a group of 3 friends who seemed completely normal up until that point with him in the car with them. Then they, for no apparent reason, turned on him and killed him. That's like a living nightmare. Then to add insult to injury, the suspects were never charged, so the kid and his girlfriend doesn't even have any closure. This case kind of makes me want ghosts/spirits to not be real, because if his ghost/spirit is still wandering around, I feel like your murderers getting away with murder would be absolute torture, and you still don't know why they just killed you out of the blue in a really painful slow way. If that happened to me, I think I'd have massive mental breakdown in my mind as I died. I wish there just could have been someone walking by, so they could saved him. Then he'd still be alive. He'd be 25 years old now. Sometimes I get reminded of his death and I cry. I imagine the terror he went through and the fear, the hopelessness, the terrified look on his face, the feeling of betrayal, how it was all dark/alone in that car, everything. For some reason he tends to come up in my dreams a lot, like I'll dream that it comes up in the newspaper that he made some miraculous recovery in the hospital, and he awoke from a coma, and he's still alive. I get excited and happy, then I wake up and realize it's just a dream and he's gone. If I ever travel to the town/state he died in, I'd make it a point to get some flowers for him and leave them at his grave. To the boy, I hope that, wherever you are right now, you're safe. Now on to the next confession. I aborted my ex's baby without her knowledge. I want to start this post by saying that this was over 12 years ago. I don't regret what I did, but that doesn't mean I don't feel bad. Me and my ex were dating for about 6 months at this point. We were both junkies at the time, and were more focused on scoring dope than any contraceptives for sex. I simply relied on what I thought at the time was an effective contraceptive measure. About 2 weeks after our 6-month anniversary she started feeling sick. Not a cold type of sick, but something she described that she had never felt before. A few more days go by, and we go to the doctors tell us the news. She's pregnant. She couldn't be more happy, while I was silently freaking the fuck out. We get home and all she can talk about is the future of the baby, and how we will be the best parents. My heart was racing, and I didn't know what to do. I knew that we would be terrible parents, and if this child was born their life would be miserable. We had little to no money, on the verge of being evicted, and let alone the possible damage the drugs we were taking would cause. The doctor informed us that quitting cold turkey could put the baby at risk. He recommended methadone while she was pregnant. That lasted about a week before she was back. I was raised by alcoholics and I know how traumatizing it can be for the child. It took me many years to get to the point where I'm at today. I talked to her about the possibility that maybe we should get an abortion as it would be best for both of us and the baby. She was absolutely against the idea and didn't even give it a second thought. At the time I was desperate to get rid of the baby or leave her altogether. About 2 months after the news she's going for one of her prenatal checkups. Doctor informs her the baby is underweight and probably not going to make it if she keeps up her lifestyle. He again offers methadone so she can focus on proper nutrition so the baby has a fighting chance. I knew that wasn't going to happen, so I took matters into my own hands. I live in a rural area of Canada, so there is a lot of farmland nearby. I was able to get Lutalyse and a few other animal abortion medications. The next time we were going to shoot up, I laced her shot with a large amount of Lutalyse. It worked. After several injections, the baby died. This broke her and me. I felt like human shit after, and even tried to kill myself several times. As did she, but not for the same reason. We broke up shortly after, and both went sober. I haven't spoken to her since. I know this will get a lot of hate, but I simply don't care. I have grown since then, and have accomplished more than I could ever imagine. This is the past, and after years of struggling with it, I realize there is nothing I can do. Now on to the next confession. Over the past 10 years I have given up 4 of my children up for adoption. All were given up for adoption at birth, and the only person who knows is my husband, who is the biological father of all 4. The TLDR is that I guess that's what happens when you're pro-life, poor, irresponsible, addicted to drugs, and at the same time wanting better for your kids. Thinking about it now, I don't think there's too much more to explain after saying that. Our first one was because we got pregnant while we were living in a hotel. We originally wanted to keep him, Caden, but really didn't receive any help from any family member we tried to reach out to. Both my husband and I were raised in poverty and didn't want that for our kids. It was my husband's grandmother who suggested adoption and gave us the agent's number. We were a month away from the due date when we called and gave in. Our second and third son were both taken in by the same parents. We were squatting in a house with no utilities with our second, and the parents put us back up in another hotel to help. You usually get an allowance to pay for bills when you do adoptions because the parents don't want the biological mother to be working. So my husband continued to work, and that was the first time we tried to quit drugs completely and save the money he made, since we didn't have to pay for any bills or food. With our third child we had managed to live in a house with roommates because of the money we had saved. The second and third are only a little over a year apart. But we were back on drugs. My husband was unemployed at that time. He was having a hard time finding work, and we didn't have a car. When we called our adoption agent afraid of what to do and asking for help, she let us know that our second's parents were looking to adopt one more. So we did that again. After a couple of years our roommates ended up moving out. One was because he lost his job and another was because after the first left they couldn't afford the newly split bills. So we ended up having to move into my husband's dad's house. It sucks because his dad was even worse with drugs than we were, and seeing his life at his age really helped us get our shit together. We actually stopped, and we've been sober ever since, a year now. But we were still stupid and irresponsible, and ended up getting pregnant again. His dad told him that I either got an abortion or move out, because he didn't want to help raise any babies, and didn't want any babies in his house. So after a bit of a falling out, we moved out into a friend's house and called our adoption agent again. So we had our first girl, our fourth child, and gave her up. My husband kept working throughout, and we saved his money again. Even though we didn't pay rent at our friend's house, our agent suggested that we tell the parents we were, so that we could save even more money. So we did. That's pretty incriminating, but it helped us so much. My husband was able to get his 450 license and get a really good paying job. We were able to get a car finally, and we've been doing much better and getting better every day. I guess what drove me to write this was because we were talking about having a child in the next year. He promised me back with our first one that he would give me a child. I honestly don't know what else to say, but that's my confession. Now on to the next confession. Had a son when I was 14 and none of my family knows besides my aunt I was raped by a family member until I was 13 and moved in with my aunt. She's a good person that took me in and helped me get away from the bad people in my family. When we found out I was pregnant, she guessed how it happened. I hadn't told her about what had happened, but she said she always expected it, but never had proof. She came up with a way to get me away. She pretended to get pregnant and asked my parents if she could get custody so I could move in with her, get homeschooled, and help her out. They said no at first because they knew they'd lose out on food stamps, so she offered to pay them whatever they would have gotten in food stamps in cash in exchange for me living there. They said yeah once they found out cash was involved, and my aunt gave them some extra cash every month to keep them out of our lives. My parents are your regular redneck junkies who are no good to anyone. I had the kid in 1988 and have seen my parents a handful of times since then. She went to court to get custody of me and said my parents dropped me off at her house one day and never picked me up. I went along with that story in court and it worked out. I said we went back to my house day after day, but they were never home. They were ordered to come to court, but never showed up. She got full custody of me and I lived with her until I was able to get myself a good job. I don't work the best job in the world, but it's better than where I came from, and I'm proud of that. In Idaho, she took me to get an abortion, but it was too late by our state's laws. She pretended to be pregnant, even tried to gain weight, and bought clothes that made her look bigger. I stayed home every day until I had the baby. Everyone thinks it's her kid. I don't feel bad about it and won't ever tell the kid unless my aunt wants to or some big emergency happens where he needs a body part. She always said it's my choice to tell, but I think it's her choice too. She raised him, he calls her mama, and I wouldn't want to take that away from them. He doesn't look like me at all. He doesn't really look like my aunt either. He thinks his daddy is some guy she met at a bar she had a one-night stand with, and she doesn't know who he was. He's an adult now and is settling down with his wife and they're thinking about having kids. It's sometimes weird because I know if they do they'll be my grandkids, but they'll never know. I don't feel like a parent to him at all. I know he's my biological kid, but I'm not his mama. Every now and then it makes me sad, but I know it was the right decision to make. He's had a good life. My aunt and I saved up to make sure he could get a good education, and he did that. He knows me as his older cousin and we get along well. He's a good guy, hardworking, a good person, does what he can to help others. I'm proud of him. Here are answers to questions people have. The person that raped me is in jail for the rest of his life. He was arrested for something and related to what he did to me, but he won't be out of jail until he's in his 90s. I doubt he'll live that long. My aunt tried for years to get me to admit what was going on. She tried very hard. Anytime she saw me, she asked if I was okay. She tried to get custody of me when I was a kid, but it didn't work out. My parents acted like decent people and I denied anything was going out because of fear. Don't assume she could have done more. She did everything she possibly could, but I was too afraid to speak up. I know DNA tests exist. I don't know if he'll get one done, but we'll talk about what to do if he ever does. It's complicated and I don't have the answers for what to do and neither do you. Everyone has their own opinions, none are right or wrong. Good intentions aren't always good advice. My parents are both alive as far as I know. I don't speak to them at all and haven't seen them since the early 2000s. I don't care to reconnect with them. The way I look at it, my aunt is the only mama I ever had, and I don't need to worry about someone who gave me up for drug money. We went to a hospital outside of town to avoid seeing anyone we knew. Growing up everyone thought I was a shy kid. I was a big reader and spent most of my time inside anyway. No one thought it was weird that I was inside a lot. My aunt had a good job that let her stay at home and work once she started complaining about having to come in while pregnant. That helped us out a lot. Back then, you could call a store to fill in your grocery order and the grocery boy would drop them off, similar to how stores have deliveries you can order online now. My water broke in the middle of the night. We were lucky with that as our neighbors never saw us leave. No, I never went to college. When I was a kid I never thought I'd even graduate high school, but I did. I won't tell you what I do for a living or where I work. That's a strange thing to message someone. Regardless, I make enough to pay my bills and have a little savings. I used to work 3 jobs to make sure I could pay for his college once the time came. Now I only work 1. I don't like what I do, but I work hard and I'm proud of that. Yes, I know my English isn't perfect. I type like how I talk, and I don't care if you think that's bad. Calling yourself a grandma Nazi is a weird way to identify. I wouldn't want to be called a Nazi about anything, nor would I be proud of that, but I guess you can live your best life, and I pray you stop sending rude messages to people. I don't care about your opinions on abortion, or if you think I'm a bad person for considering it. I was barely a teenager, and it would have been the best choice for me. No, I don't regret having the child now, but I wish I didn't destroy my body in the process. I can't have kids now because of the damage that pregnancy caused my body. A few disgusting people have messaged me that this was sexy, that I deserved it, or asked for details. I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, but from the bottom of my heart I hope you die. The world doesn't need more sick fucks like you. Yes, I know my aunt is a great person. She's the best person I have ever known. Not just because she helped me. I think she would have done the same thing for anyone. She's an angel. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and liking the video. See you in the next one.